Good evening, Los Angeles. Tonight, I'm going to keep my briefing short, and I think you know why. Tonight, we are on the verge of hopefully celebrating a Lakers championship, though as a Lakers fan, I know better than to jinx things. We have had an amazing run this week for Los Angeles sports. Whether it's our Dodgers, who won the fourth crown in 5 years for our division, or whether it's the Lakers, who have stayed in a bubble away from family to bring our city pride and joy, and not just the Lakers, but I want to give a shout out to the Clippers earlier, the way the Dodgers are performing, even the Rams and the Chargers. It has been a welcome refuge for us in the toughest of years, giving our city solidarity, giving us something to celebrate, and we look forward to recrowning Los Angeles as the sports capital of the world and bringing home an NBA championship trophy. Doing it for Kobe, doing it for our city, and doing it for all of us. But I do want to give a message to all of Los Angeles. This still remains a different year. And like in all my briefings, when we celebrate the good news and unfortunately tell the straight truth about the things we don't love, we're going to have to celebrate where we are, whether it's tonight or Sunday or whenever we win. I'm asking all Angelenos to make sure that the progress we have made in our fight against COVID-19 isn't reversed from one night of celebration, set back for weeks or even months because of our enthusiasm. So I encourage you to yell at the top of your lungs inside your homes, maybe even open up the window or step outside your door, as we've done for our first responders and essential medical workers, to thank them. Let's thank the Lakers when they win, but let's do it safe. LA Live will be closed off. We won't be able to gather together in large groups in violation of the public health orders, but we will be able to have the pride of knowing that Los Angeles is the best basketball city anywhere in the world, with the best stars, the best fans, and the greatest city. We'll be working with the Lakers to celebrate in the coming weeks. We'll tonight be able to FaceTime with friends, maybe get on a Zoom call with fellow fans to be able to celebrate where we are. But please be responsible, be safe, and be enthusiastic. Let's make sure they can hear us all the way in Orlando. So as we gather, we know that this, as we've seen in the news, virus remains very dangerous. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what protections you think you might have. We all need to act responsibly. Wear our masks and wash our hands and keep our distance. Do the things you have been doing so well here in Los Angeles. And the bottom line is, while we can't, for instance, with our sports teams hold parades or rallies in the coming days, we can't gather in large groups still, we have made great progress, and that is because of you. And I want to thank you for that. This progress, as always, though, is fragile. This Wednesday, we saw the highest number of cases in LA County in the past 6 weeks. But the good news is that seems to have been a bit of an anomaly. Well, this week, we had an average of 1,091 new cases per day. Last week, it was 1,022 cases per day on average. So we saw a small uptick this week. Let's make sure that that was just 1 day or 2 days, and let's keep the momentum going forward. The good news is our hospitalizations remain down. 673 people this past week. Last week we had 673 people in the hospital, which was the lowest day we've ever recorded. Right now we're slightly up at 701. But to put it in perspective, we've seen a 34% drop in hospitalizations in just 5 weeks because of what you have done. This protects our doctors and our medical personnel. This keeps us from being overwhelmed before the flu season starts. So let's keep that going. And right now we have 184 patients who, with COVID-19, are in an ICU bed. It's a substantial decrease since last month. But our thoughts are with each of those Angelenos in one of those beds, and the families that are hanging on. This is never a time to celebrate, even as we mark better numbers. It is still a tragic time that we are marching through, and I know the pain that so many families continue to carry with them. In this week in Los Angeles County, we lost 123 of our fellow LA County residents to COVID-19. 123 lives lost is a lot, and an unthinkable number before this pandemic started. But this number is lower than last week, when we lost 154 Angelenos, and one of the lowest one-week totals we have seen in months. And I want to extend my condolences to every Angeleno who is mourning the loss of a loved one tonight. The county now estimates that our rate of transmission is 0.99, below that magical 1 mark, meaning whether we are headed in the right direction or not. Whenever it's under 1, we're headed in the right direction, and that's good news. But no matter what, continue to listen to the public health direction, the advice of doctors and of science, and remind us all that we have the power to ensure that we don't see a major spike in infections. We have to remain vigilant. If you think you've been exposed to the virus, please get tested. Today, as of today, we've tested 1.63 million people in the city. And once you take out people who have gone more than once, now over a third of Los Angeles City residents have availed themselves of a COVID-19 test. Our 7-day positivity rate is 3.86%. And today we have mobile testing teams that are at the Weingart East LA YMCA, where we bring tests to you, Van Nuys Boulevard and Michael Street in Van Nuys, and at Slauson and Denker in South LA. For those places, you don't need an appointment. And in Union Station, we continue now to have testing there for folks who are going through their commute at LA Union Station. Tomorrow, we'll have these teams in Van Nuys again, as well as in downtown in the Fashion District in Pershing Square. And that Union Station site is now 7 days a week. To find out about those locations and any of our more than 100 testing locations in the City of Los Angeles and with the County of Los Angeles, please go to coronavirus.lacity.org/testing, or just call us at 311. Earlier today, we got some good news on one of our most important challenges, that of ending homelessness in Los Angeles, a goal that we all share. Governor Newsom announced the 4th round of the state's Project Home Key, building on the Room Key project that put our fellow Angelenos who are experiencing homelessness into hotel and motel rooms. This now moves them into permanent housing. We will receive $40 million, we learned, to help us deliver 243 rooms of housing for unhoused Angelenos. That's in addition to the good news of last week of $48.5 million that was awarded to acquire 5 hotel and apartment properties. We've also been working very hard to support our restaurants, and I always want to remind folks, please order out. There's restaurants still hanging on. They've been so hard hit by this pandemic, and relying on takeout and delivery apps have previously charged very high fees to restaurants, making it hard for them to survive and keep their workers on the job. So back in June, we capped these fees. And tonight I can announce that we will extend those caps for another 90 days past when indoor service is allowed at full capacity, as well as establishing additional enforcement tools to ensure compliance. And I'm very grateful to Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell for his great work on leading this work, and for supporting all of our local businesses. I also hope that Washington, D.C., now that we've heard that negotiations are back, and I've been in communications directly with Secretary Mnuchin, Speaker Pelosi over this last week, that they will come to an agreement. Even if the president walked away 2 days from that, he has now started those up, and I hope that even in an election season, we can put the American people first and get the deal done, helping folks get cash assistance they need, helping our restaurants and airline workers, and helping our cities and state governments get the assistance that we are spending out of our pockets to be the frontline responders to COVID-19. Whether helping businesses or workers or tenants or patients through this crisis, we've taken every decision through the lens of equity to make sure that we're being fair to all communities and recognizing the barriers that people face because of racial barriers and racism, because of geography, because of age and pre-existing conditions. And this week, we saw those efforts pay off. In fact, this was the first week that the state of California unveiled an equity metric, a way that they can analyze how well cities in California are doing in addressing not just COVID-19 equally, but COVID-19 especially looking at those who are most vulnerable. We were very proud to erase, for instance, the African American death rate that around the country was double the population in most major cities of African Americans. We brought that down, perhaps the first big city, to under the population in LA County. We've surged tests, as I was talking about, to communities and neighborhoods that had very low response rates, where poverty was high, where immigrants work, where our Pacific Islander and Native American communities are. And this week, the state said that Los Angeles was performing extremely well. In fact, we got extra credit in looking at our numbers for where we can open in the future because of the work that we've done. So job well done to every nonprofit, every government worker, every essential worker who's been making sure that we don't just do our job as it's written, but we look for who is missing and make sure that they are included in our efforts so that nobody is left behind and existing health disparities are not made worse by this pandemic. We've shrunk this gap by expanding testing to our Black and Latino communities. We've deployed resources to those who are needing rent and cash assistance, including immigrants who are written out of our federal legislation, and making sure that we take another step forward in that. Today, we announced a new partnership between our housing authority, Starry Internet, and Microsoft, which will deliver 6 months of free internet, high-speed internet access to residents in 4 public housing communities across Los Angeles. We don't want any child to fall further behind in her studies because of the resources that her family may lack. This is the right thing to do, and I thank our partners that will help ensure that families and children living in public housing no longer find themselves on the wrong side of internet inequality. This is just one of the steps that we're taking to support kids, and I want to acknowledge how difficult this has been for our young people and for any parents right now, as we await for schools to open and classrooms to be available. Since the pandemic began, we closed our parks and playgrounds based on the public health advice. But this week, we began the process, again, with the concurrence of the state and our county public health department, of reopening our playgrounds in city parks. They're not all open yet. Some are, and you'll have to see in your neighborhood park. We need to clean them, we need to put the signage up and the protocols to ensure that our children can have more places to play and to play safely and to grow during this time, but also to do it safely. Over the next several weeks, playgrounds will be thoroughly inspected, they'll be cleaned before they're opened, and new signs will be very clear with the rules. Kids and adults alike must observe strict social distancing, cover their faces, and not eat or drink in the park. We're also expanding our hours of operation at city tennis courts and allowing for both singles and doubles play. As we return to our shared public spaces, let's all do our part to keep them opening and keep this momentum going. This is the end of another difficult week. It's the end of, or coming on the end of, an unprecedented year. I know how much stress you have carried. I know how much pain you have felt. We have all seen some of the darkest moments in our life this year and some of the most hopeful moments of solidarity as well. We've confronted COVID-19, a righteous reckoning with racial justice, dangerous wildfires and the worst air quality in 30 years, the hottest days on record, and the toughest economy for too many of us. Most recently, we've seen our Armenian brothers and sisters crying for peace in Artsakh in the face of violent assault on innocent lives, and then just the normal stress of trying to make sure our kids are educated, that we can spend time together, and that we can get out for a walk and some fresh air. Through these ups and downs, I have seen once again who we are and what we are made of. Los Angeles is a beautiful city, full of beautiful people. We are doing the hard work, too, to get through this year and to see a better tomorrow, a better 2021, and a safer community, a rebuilt city in which people are housed, in which we address racism, in which we build a fair economy, and we look out for each other's health. So let's stay safe and stay healthy. And let's root for our Lakers tonight. Go Lakers. I'm sending you a lot of strength and love so you can get to that pregame show. Thank you all, and I'll now speak in Spanish. Buenas tardes, Los Ángeles. Pronto estaremos apoyando a nuestros Lakers en el quinto partido de los Juegos Finales de NBA. Entonces seré breve. Como su alcalde, me dirijo a nuestros aficionados de los Lakers, sin importar qué pase esta noche. Aunque ganemos o perdamos o este fin de semana ganemos, necesitamos responder de manera segura y responsable. Desafortunadamente, este año, si tenemos algo que festejar, tendremos que hacerlo de lejos. No podemos organizar fiestas ni reunirnos en frente del centro de Staples. Reúnanse virtualmente por Skype o Zoom o FaceTime y por favor quédense en casa para protegernos a todos. Hemos progresado mucho en nuestra lucha contra contra el virus. Y la ciudad se está acercando hacia la próxima fase amarilla, en la cual podremos abrir más nuestra economía de manera segura. Pero sabemos que este progreso es frágil. El miércoles tuvimos el mayor número de casos en el condado en las últimas 6 semanas. Esta semana tuvimos un promedio de 1,091 casos cada día, un pequeño aumento de la semana pasada, cuando tuvimos un promedio de 1,022 casos cada día. Lo bueno es que el número de personas hospitalizadas se mantiene bajo. Tuvimos 673 la semana pasada y ahora ha subido un poco a 701 personas hospitalizadas. En las últimas 5 semanas hemos visto un descenso del 34%. Y esta semana, tristemente, fallecieron 123 vecinos de COVID-19. El condado estima que la tasa de transmisión es de 0.99, más baja que la semana pasada, la cual indica que nuestras acciones han tenido un impacto. El inventario en nuestros hospitales sigue estable. En el condado hay 774 camas disponibles y 1,252 ventiladores disponibles. Y mientras avanzamos poco a poco, tenemos que permanecer vigilantes. Quédense en casa cuando puedan y no se reúnen con otras. Lávese las manos. Lleve una mascarilla de los Dorios o Lakers y vaya a recibir su vacuna contra la influenza. Y si cree que ha sido expuesto al virus, hágase una prueba gratis. Seguimos enviando equipos móviles donde la necesidad es inmediata. Mañana tendremos equipos móviles en Van Nuys, así como en el centro de la ciudad, en el distrito de la Moda y Pershing Square. Y nuestro sitio de Union Station ahora está abierto los 7 días de la semana. Para hacer una cita, visite el sitio de internet coronavirus.lacity.org/testing o llámanos a 311. Al entrar el 7º mes de COVID-19, seguimos en nuestro trabajo para apoyar a nuestros vecinos más vulnerables. Hoy me uní al gobernador Newsom para anunciar la 4ª ronda de los premios Home Key del estado, un programa para ayudar a ciudades como Los Ángeles a comprar propiedades para convertirlas en viviendas. Los Ángeles está recibiendo $40 millones para ayudarnos a instalar 243 habitaciones de vivienda para personas sin hogar. Además de los $48.5 millones para adquirir 5 propiedades de hoteles y apartamentos en la semana pasada. También estamos apoyando a nuestros restaurantes más afectados que contribuyen tanto a nuestra economía local. Mientras estas pequeñas empresas dependen de las aplicaciones de entrega a casa, estos servicios le cobraban tarifas muy altas, agregando un cargo adicional mientras luchaban para sobrevivir. En junio aplicamos un límite a las tarifas que pueden cobrar estas compañías. Hoy estoy anunciando que extendemos este límite de tarifas que seguirá vigente hasta 90 días después de que el servicio para comer al interior pueda operar a capacidad completa. Y además aplicamos nuevas medidas para asegurar su cumplimiento. También nos aseguramos de que todos los angelinos tengan igual acceso a los recursos críticos, sin importar su código postal. Hoy dimos otro paso adelante. Anunciamos una nueva colaboración entre nuestra autoridad de vivienda, Starry Internet y Microsoft para entregar 6 meses de acceso gratuito a una conexión de Internet a los residentes en 4 comunidades de vivienda pública en todo Los Ángeles. Este programa asegurará que ninguna familia se quede atrás y le ofrecerá a casi 9,000 residentes acceso a una conexión de banda ancha de bajo costo y alta calidad. También hemos comenzado el proceso de reapertura de nuestros patios de recreo. Cada uno será inspeccionado y limpiado antes de que se abra al público y tendrán letreros describiendo las reglas de salud pública. Niños y adultos por igual deben observar un estricto distanciamiento social, cubrirse la cara y no comer ni beber en el parque. Hemos llegado al final de una semana muy difícil, pero nunca he tenido tanto orgullo de ser un angelino. Entonces, este fin de semana, quédense protegidos, quédense en nuestra salud, en Nueva Salud, y quédense, por favor, en casa. Arriba los Lakers. Fuerza y amor, Los Ángeles. And with that, I'm going to take one question. Claudia, KNX.
Hi.
How are you? Sorry to miss you earlier. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
We can
I just
hear you
wanted
great.
to ask you about the pilot on paper strip testing,
Yes.
when that's going to be starting and how that first phase is going to go.
Yes. Good news. We've got over 20,000 of the paper strip tests working with HHS, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Rockefeller Foundation, USC, which will be doing the research part of it, and we are all ready to go. We hope to be able to announce next week the starting date, but it should be in the next couple weeks. We will be able to go live with that, starting with our first responders, our firefighters, and we're also working to look at a school pilot as well. LAUSD has its own testing right now, but perhaps with an independent or charter school, we'll be looking at how we can use that paper strip testing and apply it in those two environments with essential workers and with our students. So hopefully sometime around the last 10 days of October, we will launch that. And we're confident about that. We'll be the first in the country to do this in an extensive way. And we're doing this with national partners to be able to share that information with HHS, through Rockefeller Foundation, and other cities who we're bringing in to hopefully do their pilots shortly thereafter as well. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Lakers fans. Thank you, Angelinos, for celebrating safely tonight. Fingers crossed. We'll see you soon, and hopefully as a City of Champions once again. Have a good night.